Hello, World Sky Boy Red. We're back after a short break, and so is the Premier League as Nottingham Forest take on Brighton at the City Ground on Saturday. Joining me to discuss the game and a serious injury setback for the Reds are, first of all, Reds fan Emily Anderson. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Nice to do an evening podcast. Feels very relaxed.
Yeah, this was around people's availability. We thought we'd do an evening one, and then our second guest has kept us waiting for about 10 minutes as he sorted his mic issues out. Mikey, Clarke, are you well?
I am really good, thank you, although my volume is really loud, so apologies if I speak up a little bit. But yeah, I'm great, thank you, and thanks everyone for holding on. My fault, tech issues.
If people in the comments think our volume's uneven, then drop a comment in. There's not much I can do about it, but I'll have a go and try and fix it. Mikey, you're wearing... you put a poll on Twitter saying, is it too early for a Christmas jumper? And you're wearing a seasonal Christmas jumper already.
I am, yeah. I think it's... I never used to be a big Christmas fan, but the last few years I have been. And seeing as I'm working all over Christmas, because I work in retail, I'm starting early. So all I wanted was a little bit of validation on Twitter, which I got, I think 1 in 5 agreed with me. So there you go.
And Emily, you're also wearing a Christmas jumper.
Yeah, mine's a bit more subtle than Mikey's. But when Mikey mentioned he might, I just thought I don't want to be left out. And equally, Mikey, I just like celebrating Christmas. So what is it? 23rd, maybe a bit early, but yeah, I don't mind. And
I'm wearing one of about 10 blue hoodies that I own as normal.
You are the Grinch of the podcast.
I am. Yes, certainly. Right. Lots of people in the comments have been commenting on this, so we should say something. You might have seen on Twitter the post from Temps about his wife, Laura. No one who listened or watched over the last 18 months would have known that Laura had terminal cancer throughout that time. She died last week, leaving behind Temps and their 2 young children. I know everyone listening to this, we're both shocked and sending their support. I say shocked because of the way Temps carried himself throughout such a terrible time. I'm reading this like a robot, by the way, so if I read it properly, I'll just start crying. I cried when I wrote this as well. Lewis McGugan messaged me when he to say it's a mark of the man that he conducted himself as he did on here and in life. No doubt the strength that he showed will help him and in turn his kids going forwards. I can't speak highly enough of Temps as a mate and a person. I look forward to him coming back as soon as he's ready. In the meantime, I know everyone associated with the podcast is thinking of him and everyone who listens and in the comments, and lots of comments, very much appreciated before we start. Right. Not easy to move on from that, but obviously It's been a difficult few days, partly why we took a bit of a break. But we're back, so let's talk about football. Taiwo Awoniyi, Emily, I've said on here the key to Forest season is Taiwo Awoniyi, and he's out for 3 to 4 months. What are your just general thoughts on the car crash news of today, or is it not that bad after all?
Initial thoughts, absolutely gutted. Can't believe it. I can't believe our luck. We'd got him back and he scored in the last time out. He was doing what we know Tai can do, breaking up defenders, being strong on the ball, making great runs, scoring goals. And we got devastating news today that he's out. It's a groin injury, isn't it? And he's out for 2 or 3 months, which is terrible. So for us fans, it's a horrible shock. And we go, oh, how do we go into the Brighton game without Tai? But the more I think about it, Steve Cooper and his staff will have known about this. This isn't a shock to them. They will have been preparing for Saturday without Taiwo. And I think we need to kind of have that same mentality, really. And we also can't just build a team around one player. As Steve Cooper says time and time again, we've got to think next man up, and hopefully Chris Wood can step up. Do you remember in the Luton game, no one gave Chris Wood a chance? And if we weren't so poor defending that day, his 2 goals would have won us the game. So we've just got to put our faith in Chris Wood. I am gutted, but equally, it's not a lot we can do about it.
Yeah. I mean, I've been a bit of a backer of Chris Wood this season, Mikey, and you have consistently. I suppose the problem is Wood's a decent Premier League striker who's done well for us, but there is a considerable drop-off from Taiwo, and it presents a big problem for how we play as a team, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. He's a different proposition altogether, isn't he, Chris Wood? I think, but I think you've got to look positive, and I think Emily makes a great point saying, that Steve Cooper and his coaching staff will have known about this. Ago, they said it was a situation that needed to be managed. Now, obviously, something's happened to maybe flip the switch to say, actually, he does need surgery, and if we get surgery now, then we can get him back for the back end of the season. So they'll have known this. He's gone for surgery, and we've got Chris Wood and Origi from the bench. So it's not as if we don't have any options like we had at Liverpool when we had to play Elanga up front. And Chris Wood is a seasoned Premier League striker. His profile is completely different. I understand that. He's not one that's goes the yards like Taiwo did at Man U. That's not his game. But what is his game, as Emily quite rightly points out, is getting on the end of crosses and holding the ball up and bringing others into play. So I think if you're looking for positives, and I'm clutching at straws a little bit, like I said, they would have known about this. They would have trained for it. And also, you'd expect that there's a pattern of play that we'll see in the next few games with Chris Wood, knowing that, let's be honest, he's probably going to start all those games. So they're going to know that. And like I said, Chris Wood has never really let us down, including myself a little bit, but, he does a good job for when he comes in. So let's be positive. And also, and I know we'll touch on this, Brighton have got a few injuries as well, more than a few. So it's almost two patched up teams that we're going to see on Saturday. So God knows what's going to happen. But like I said, we've got Chris Wood, we've got Origi, we've got options behind him. So it's not the end of the world. And Taiwo's gone in for his surgery. And if you remember when he came back last time, he was brilliant. So that gives us something to look forward to, sort of Q2 time, maybe March. Yeah, bad news, but let's try and be positive about it, knowing what Chris Wood brings to the side, which is, he's on the pitch, you get the ball and he'll score a goal. So it's not the end of the world.
Mikey mentions his previous surgery, Emily. It's the same injury again, going back to Southampton last year. That's a concern, isn't it? A player gets the same injury twice. Do you have long-term concerns about Taiwo's viability of ever playing 35 games a season for us?
Yeah, I mean that's bound to happen, isn't it? When this happened to us last season, he hasn't shown us, unfortunately, that he can play the best part of a season. Definitely not a full season. But again, we just have to go with what we've got, because when he's fit and firing on all cylinders, I wouldn't want anyone else up front for us for Forest. And I'm sure other Premier League clubs would be vying for his signature if he could maybe stop getting injured. But that's obviously his Achilles heel. His groin is his Achilles heel, isn't it? So yeah, it's just really frustrating, and it's just typical of our luck, isn't it, that we get an amazing striker that can't stay fit.
It's frustrating. He went away on international duty knowing he's carrying an injury, but then players take pride in playing for their country, and you can't really stop them. If it was an England player, they'd want to do it. So I sort of, take that on board. But
it's not up to Tai either, is it? If he's a footballer, he loves playing football. If he thinks he can play, he'll play. It was up to his coaching staff and physios that have said, you shouldn't play for Nigeria, so you're not, I don't blame him at all. He loves football.
A couple of ones on that as well, Mikey, kind of branching out. Firstly, before we get to January, I take it it's Wood, not Origi for you. A few people said give Origi a shot, but I'd be going to Wood again.
You know what you get with Chris Wood, and I know that might sound a strange comment because Origi has arguably played well. He has played at a high level, scored winners in Champions League finals. But in terms of his body of work for Forest, it's a solid 60, 70-minute job. Chris Wood would have thought. So I think he'll get the nod. He came on against West Ham. He seems to be the first change, and then they obviously threw Origi on when we went 3-2 down. But I think Cooper as well talks about him being part of the leadership group. And I think it's at times like this where he'll step up, he'll show and I think he'll get the shirt on Saturday, and I think he'll play. I think he'll play basically until either he gets injured and Origi comes in, or we try something different. But I think he's the next man up. And like I said, he's a proven backup. He's been around the block. He's got the T-shirt. He's been in this league for a long time. So I've got no overall worries. It's just his profile is very different to Taiwo. Now, Origi, like I said, I can understand people saying to give him a chance in the first team. But if I was Divock Origi, I'd be thinking, right, I'm going to get on 60 minutes now, not Chris Wood. So I'm going to get, and if I raise my level of performance to a level where I know I've been before, maybe I can get the shirt for the next game. So you've got to look at it in a positive way. But I'd be very shocked, Matt, if Chris Wood is not on that team sheet on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I've got enough faith. I'll probably put in my FPL team. I think you can get a couple of goals between now and Christmas. But
don't curse him, please don't curse him.
Well, he was in my team when we played Luton, just that one game.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair play.
I think what it does, I think it affects how we play is the problem more than Chris Wood, the player. We're just a much more limited team compared to a 1 year because of what he offers us overall. But yeah, we are where we are till January, which begs the question, Emily, 8 games until then, and then every egg in one basket of buying us an experienced striker for you?
I think so, yeah, because all other areas of pitch I think we're pretty damn solid, and we've got really good backups as well. Our midfield's looking really good, and we have backups there. We've got enough central defenders, haven't we, to start a whole team of central defenders, it feels like, although we're losing them now already, so it won't. Yeah, we've got to get a good striker, and it's easier said than done. I've said this before on the podcast. Most clubs are struggling to find an out-and-out striker because it seems to be a dying art. So I don't know where we'd go. We've probably got to go maybe to our Brazilian scouts or somewhere further afield that can find us a little gem from over in Argentina or Brazil, possibly.
Good to have lots of people with us, 400 with us already, which is great. Hi to Casey, who is in the States. So I know it says he's going to his first game at the weekend. I assume that's with his son as well. So that's great. So enjoy.
Happy Thanksgiving Day for you. It's today, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, he'll have had turkey, but not a Christmas jumper on yet. So yeah, welcome, Casey. Certainly. Let's turn our attention to the Brighton game, just in more general terms. How are you feeling about it, Mikey? In fact, I know you were very optimistic about it about 11 a.m. today. How are you feeling now?
I was very optimistic about it because I've seen their injury list. I went into my work office today in Leeds, hence why I'm wearing the Forest top, just to wind a few people up. And the first time I had a message from you, Matt, and it was saying, "I can't believe it." I was thinking, what's gone off? And then you see the tire.
Instead of 4-letter word, I think was the only thing.
Yeah, I was phrasing it around the ball. And I was thinking, what's gone off? And then you look and you're thinking, oh, what a dreadful bit of news with Taiwo. And then you find out that Danilo might be carrying a knock. Murillo, we're not too sure about. Alanga, obviously Paul. You're thinking, blimey, we're as decimated as them. So I'm still positive because I think Brighton's form is not very good. I think they've drew 5 of the last 6. They're certainly not on any good roll of form. I think European football is catching up with them a little bit, like it does. Thursday, it's tough, and they've not got the biggest squad. So I'm still positive, maybe not as positive as I was at 8 o'clock this morning, but I'm certainly still positive. I think I cast my mind back to last season and the way we played against them last season, tactically incredibly astute from Cooper. He let their centre-backs have the ball and take it into our half. And when I first watched that, it became very apparent to me that was a completely tactical masterstroke, because as soon as they lost it, we broke on them rapidly. Do I expect it to do the same again? Probably. I think if we had Taiwo fit and maybe Callum Hudson-Odoi, we'd try and be a little bit more higher pressing. But I'd expect them to have 60-70% possession and us to break. But I still think we'll get a result. I think we've got enough. I still think we've got bench options. And I think, as I said, they've not been on a great run of form. And we are bloody good at home. Let's not kid ourselves. I think that is damn good. So it takes a hell of a team to come to our place and beat us. So I'm still really, really optimistic, even with today's news. I fancy very tight game, maybe a 1-0 or 2-1.
Good to have a slightly different audience with us on an evening as well. Anna's first live show, and continuing the stateside theme, Christian in North Carolina. Yay. And Christian in San Francisco. One here from Greg. I'll answer quickly. Is Hudson-Odoi back in the frame for selection? Cooper said he's close to returning to training, so I would think 2 or 3 weeks before he's back on the bench, I would say. But certainly
that's about right, isn't it? For the timeline, yeah. I think it was 6 weeks, wasn't it, initially?
I think so. Right, talking about Brighton then. I spoke to a Brighton fan in the build-up to the game. People who watch know Mark Southerns does FPL Black Box. Mark was on last week's podcast. His partner in crime on Black Box is Az Phillips, who's a Brighton fan. So I spoke to Az, and he wasn't very optimistic, although he did predict Brighton would win the game on Black Box, I saw. But talking of injuries, I'll play this clip from Az. It's 58 seconds long, discussing Brighton's injury issues, and then I'll catch people on the other side.
A lot of teams maybe use the international break to kind of recover some players, and we've actually ended up losing a key player and not getting Estupinan back. There's a picture of him with a brace on his leg, so he doesn't look like he's going to be ready for the weekend. So yeah, and De Zerbi is rotating a lot. I'm not sure what our strongest 11 is at the moment. I'm not even sure what our strongest defence is at the moment, because he's playing Igor out of position. Van Heck's come in. Sometimes it's Gross at right back. Sometimes it's other players. So yeah, I think it is a good time to play us. We've still got players that can hurt. I think Fatty is improving. He's been a bit of a success story over the last few weeks. He's getting more minutes and he's playing well. I think Adingra has been absolutely brilliant for us all season. Whether he plays on the right or on the left, I don't think it matters. I think he can do well. So I think we'll score. It's just how many can Forest get against us? And I think if you should be confident of scoring a couple, I think. So it should be an entertaining game.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke before Awoniyi's injury, but I don't think it really changed anything. And the player, as mentions, about a key injury for them is Mitoma, who has trained today. So he might actually be available, but they are still missing a lot of key players. But when you hear us talk there, Emily, does it feel like one where if we're positive, and I don't mean go gung-ho, but maybe, hit them on the break and press at the right time, then we can get some joy against them, even if Brighton are a good side?
We should have nothing to fear against Brighton. We took on Villa, who are still a top 5 side, and beat them 2-0 very comfortably. Last season, when we didn't have the personnel that we'll have on Saturday, we beat Brighton very comfortably at the City Ground. I see no reason why we shouldn't be going for all 3 points. We talk about our injuries. They are missing serious key players. Evan Ferguson, who's been scoring their goals, got injured in the international break. Koaru Mitoma, we've mentioned. Yeah, he might be back in training, but I can't see him being back for full fitness for Saturday. Estupian's out, and Enciso. They've got so many big names that aren't featuring. You mentioned their form, Mikey. I checked. They haven't won a Premier League game since September, and that was against Bournemouth at home. They haven't kept a clean sheet all season. Their defence is not the best. And you wouldn't think that of Brighton, would you? And I think you alluded to it, but I think their European tour that they're clearly enjoying, and they're doing very well in Europe, is really wreaking havoc on their Premier League form. It's those Thursday nights, I think, are giving them a bit of a hangover for the weekend. So, yes, we've had an international break, so that kind of changes things slightly. But even though Ty's out, and we've heard about Murillo and Danilo, who are injured as well, we've got so many backups that I just feel like, why not? Yes, Ty's gone and we've got to go maybe play slightly differently with Chris Wood in. But no, I think you could tell from the way that Az was talking that he's probably not looking forward to the trip. And he said it's a good time to play Brighton, but it's never a good time to come to the City Ground. No,
we got them at a good time last year and beat them, obviously. Let's continue the international theme, because there's so many people with us. Just mention them. Kay in Christchurch, Paul in Wellington, New Zealand, not Telford, where I'm from. There are a couple of others. Lindsay Clarke says Mikey's too positive for my liking. He has to be cheerful sometimes, Lindsay. Mark, the Irish viewer, and Miles from Sydney. That was the other one. Right. So speaking of Brighton's defence, then the second and final clip from Az, which is teed up nicely by Emily, professional broadcaster, is on Brighton's defence and the big problems they have. So 1 minute, 4 seconds, and then once again, see you on the other side.
We're a mess defensively at the moment. I mean, even in goal, I mean, it's a rotation between Steele and Verbruggen every week. I'm not convinced Steele is kind of up to being in a top 6-ish challenging side. I think he's done well for us. We've obviously tried to strengthen that with Verbruggen, but he's a very young goalkeeper. I think he's number 1 for Holland now. So, clearly massive potential, but hasn't looked amazing in every game that I've seen. And then, I just don't think James Milner should be starting for a Premier League side at the moment. I think Doku pretty much destroyed him when he played against him when we played Man City. As I said, Gross has been playing there. Lamptey's just not fit. On the other side, Estupinan's gone. Then we bring March in, and then he gets injured, and then it's Igor goes over. Yeah, I mean, centre back, we've got Dunk, Webster, and Van Heck, and I think Van Heck is looking really good, getting better every time I've kind of seen him play. Webster, got my doubts about him, so defense is a bit of a shambles, I have to say.
One other thing I said, which isn't in the clip, was that they struggle against big strikers and powerful strikers. Obviously, you mentioned Haaland, but he was worried about Taiwo, so Wood sort of fits that bracket still. I think the key man for me, though, Mikey, is probably Anthony Elanga. If Milner plays right back, or Pascal Gross, who's a bit out of position, they're not the quickest. That feels to me like an area where we can really get at them.
Yeah, I think so. I'm buzzing after hearing that. He sounds really scared, doesn't he, of coming to the City ground? Don't think he's looking forward to it. But yeah, absolutely. I think, Emily's point about them not keeping clean sheets and not winning games, it just kind of emphasises what we were saying earlier. Yeah, they can be got at. Did he say we'll score at least 1 or 2? I did hear him say that, didn't he?
He thinks they'll score, and he thinks the question is how many will we score? Can we get 2 or 3, basically, against their weak defence?
Interesting. I'm not sure they'll score. Okay, well, we'll see how it plays out. I think if we go 1-0 up, I think they may struggle the way we'll sort of camp in and hit them on the break. But I think going back to absolutely, he was talking about the fullback falling over and injury after injury, and Lewis Dunk is obviously a very good player, but they don't look as defensively solid as they were last season, that's for sure. So Elanga has arguably been our best player this season. Might agree with that, might not, but I think he's certainly benefiting from a run of games in the first team. He was a little bit part at the start of the season. Certainly at his time at Man United, he was in and out as well, but he's getting a run in the side now. And he's paying dividends. I think his pace, so even on the transition, if you just get it down the sides to Elanga, he's going to scare a lot of people. Is he quicker than Brennan Johnson? Probably. I mean, he looks it, doesn't he? He's absolutely terrifying, his pace. And now he's got a big target man in the middle with Chris Wood, because he's just going to stick around that penalty box. So I fancy us to score. I fancy us to win the game. I think we'll cause them a lot of problems. But for me, what's interesting is how it pans out tactically, because like I said at the start, I think if we had a fully fit squad with Callum playing and Taiwo playing, I think we might have pressed them high up the pitch. Now you might see what happened last season is just sit back a little bit, and I just urge and encourage the crowd to just recognise that that's the case, and it works a treat against them, because they do occasionally give the ball away, and we're very good. We've got space to attack, so I think it'll be an intriguing tactical encounter, and I fancy goals. I really do. It might. I think both teams will probably score. Yeah, actually, yeah, I've convinced myself. I think both teams will probably score, but I fancy us to come out on top. I think we'll have enough over the 90 minutes, and like I said, their confidence might be a bit shot. So,
yeah, I mean, I think both teams will score. Brighton have got Fatty, Adingra, Ferguson's probably fit, so. Yeah, they can hurt us, but I do think we can hurt them. I can see it being a good game for those who are going, hopefully, and obviously hope we come out on top. Let's do, as we always do, our lineup for the game. They were slightly different till the injuries, but now I'll put them up and I'll talk around the names. Danilo and Murillo are two to mention, obviously, on the back of the press conference as well. But this is the lineup we've basically all gone for. So I'll read it out for people who are listening, not viewing. Vlachodimos in goal, Aina, Bolly, Niakate, Toffolo as a back four. That's because Murillo is a big doubt. Cooper didn't actually say he's out, but he all but said he's out after that hamstring injury against West Ham. Mangala, Sangare, Dominguez, because Danilo hobbled off in that game, and he sounds like he's pretty much out as well. And then Gibbs, White, Elanga, and Wood in a front three that pretty much picks itself, I guess. Emily, do you like that team? I know you this was your team, wasn't it? Apart from the centre half, obviously being Murillo, so you like this team.
Yeah, and obviously I had Taiwo as the centre forward as well. Yeah, I mean, I toyed with bringing Danilo in place of Dominguez, but I felt like he hadn't done enough wrong, and I thought it would do more harm than good to drop him. So that midfield works really well for me. And actually, even with the Murillo injury, that's a really solid back four. And Bolly's been, for me, one of our players of the season and was really unlucky to lose his place. It's only because Murillo did so well. And obviously, Niakate's come back and shown his athleticism and his pace. We've got Aina and Toffolo, who can both cause problems, can't they, moving forward and still solid defensively. Gibbs-White hopefully will start to find some good form. And I think Elanga, as we've mentioned, could really punish Brighton, who obviously we know they play that high line. And I think if we can take advantage of that, Elanga/Toffolo playing into Chris Wood could be brilliant, actually, because we know Chris Wood can finish.
Andrew slightly aggressively asks about Anthony Elanga. Why are these lot forgetting? Cooper said about Elanga, has he got a knock? Yeah, he missed international due to the knee problem, but he has trained this week, so I'm sure he'll play. I can't see why he wouldn't. I think that was one of those international break injuries where they do miss out. Montiel, someone asks about, I think he's training as well, but he's just out of the picture at the moment. Mikey, your original team actually did have Danilo in ahead of Dominguez. Is that kind of based on what he did last year, or you like Danilo's ability to break from deep?
Yeah, it was both. So I understand what Emily say dropping Dominguez, but just leaving him out for this game. I thought he was poor against West Ham. Obviously, his mistake for that first goal. But again, I don't want to sort of chastise or criticise. But I do think for me it would have been a tactical decision more than to punish him or whatever you want to call it for his performance against West Ham, where he was hooked at half time. It was more along the lines of what I saw last year and how effective Danilo was. As soon as we won that ball back, he was the one that was darting forward all the time. A good opportunity to give him 55, 60 minutes if it tactically plays out the way I expect it to play out, with them sort of coming forward, losing the ball hopefully, and then him absolutely, breaking forward past Chris Wood or Taiwo, as it hopefully should have been, but isn't. But if he's not playing, that's fine, because Dominguez has been fantastic this season. One bad half doesn't summarise his Forest career so far. He's been really consistent, and his ratting around to win the ball back, should I say. I think in my head I was thinking get him on for the last 30 minutes, hopefully when we're defending a lead, because he'd be really useful then, him and probably Ryan. But it is what it is, as somebody once said. So if Danilo can't play, no problem. You just stick with those three in midfield that have been fantastic all throughout the season. So you've got Ryan Yates to bring on if needs be. You can drop Gibbs-White into the three if you want to bring Divock Origi on if we're chasing the game or we're going for a winner. So again, we've got options, haven't we? And that team will look, even with the injuries that we have, it will still look strong on Saturday. So yeah, Danilo would have been my only change from Emily's team, but I understand the counter argument. But it does look like maybe Dominguez will play, and I'm fine with that.
Is there any argument, Emily? Someone mentioned this to me. I can't remember on WhatsApp. It's Mark actually. Around Gibbs-White as a false nine. This was more when Hudson-Odoi comes back. But say Danilo's fit, would you play Gibbs-White as a false nine and not have Wood?
I don't know if I'd feel very comfortable with that, although he doesn't seem very happy playing off the right at the moment, does he? I don't know, Michael, what do you think? I just don't think that would work for us, because then you lose that creativity, don't you? If he's, I don't know, no. At home,
no, I wouldn't, because I like Gibbs-White on the half term when he's got options in front of him. But as a false nine, he's usually the main man forward, and he turns and there's no one to pass it to. So I think at home, with our squad being as strong as it is since that closing of the window, I don't think there's a strong enough argument not to play a striker now, because we've got options around him. So if anything, I concur with you, Emily. If anything, we get Gibbs-White into the centre with a striker in front of him. So however that looks, you've got to think on Saturday, Brighton are going to have a lot of the ball. Their centre-backs step out. I'd like to see Gibbs-White maybe come inside and make that sort of box midfield and not let them get anywhere. So I think you might see a lot of that. But if he's up front, he's going to be there anyway. And he wins the ball back, he's got no one to pass to. So maybe against the top echelon teams, I can kind of understand it, where we're going to get not much possession, not many chances. But I think Brighton, they're decimated by injuries. This is a great opportunity for us to be on the... So I wouldn't consider it not for this game.
As Peter says, do us a favour and hit the like button. Be very much appreciated. Help us out. So picking up what Mikey said there, I've done something slightly different and done a graphic of sort of how I think we can get at Brighton. So I'll put it on the screen, and it's got, for people who are listening, Aina basically playing as a right winger, but he's not going to play as a right winger. He's a right back. But what Mikey was saying there is, I think, get Gibbs White as close to Wood as you can to vacate some space for Aina, and then push Toffolo and Elanga high up the pitch and just let Mangala and Sangare sit. Because from what Az was saying, Emily, their fullbacks, I mean, James Milner and Igor, who's a centre-back, is a weakness. Do you feel like, to me, it feels like we need to be brave and have a go?
Yeah, we do actually, because he very politely said that they're not very fast, are they? Which makes me think they might be, like we sometimes say players have like the turning circle of a double-decker bus. Hopefully it will be that sort of vibe. And Toffolo and Elanga will just destroy them, won't they? Because we know that Toffolo and Elanga can both run with the ball. And yeah, you're right. Having Mangala and Sangare, who quite naturally like to sit back, don't they? Then it just gives us that freedom to move forward. And then it can push Gibbs White into the middle, where he feels more comfortable, and Aina can patrol the right wing. So yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, I think that two centre-backs is so important these days. Obviously, Spurs were masters of it, of Van der Ven and Romero running a show and being quick. So there's a risk playing it with Bolly. And I'm not saying Aina plays this high and Toffolo plays this high. I'm just saying when we have the ball in advanced areas, let's be brave and let's get at them, and let's trust Sangare to be the player that we bought to fill those spaces, and Mangala. And let's see a bit more from Dominguez than West Ham, but we know how good he is. Any final thoughts on the game, Mikey, before we move on to the last 10 minutes?
I've got some thoughts on that team. That's like, for people that play Football Manager, that's the formation you're at in the last minute when you're 1-0 down. You've got the 2-4-4. Everybody forward. I concur. I think the best teams do that, don't they? They leave 1 or 2 sitting, and the fullbacks bomb forward and overload the wide areas. So if Emily, if you're right, and they're not as quick as maybe some of the teams that we're going to see down there, there's a great opportunity to sort of pen them in at times and get that overload and get crosses into Chris Wood. So it almost like works out with him on the pitch. So I think they'll have worked on that. I think that's the way forward. You're not gonna be so intricate, I think, against Brighton, because they're very technically gifted. I think the way to beat them is down the sides with pace, a bit orcs, and I think we'll create chances. And as your mate says, they're not the strongest defensively, so a bit of concerted pressure with Toffolo and Aina overlapping. If you think of the recent goals that we had, the one at West Ham with Aina down the right, and also, Toffolo down the left against Villa, pulls it back for Aina. That's the way to get at Brighton, I think. Get down the sides with the pace. I think it looked mad on paper when you looked at it, but I get the thought process behind it. I think that's probably a definite weakness for them. I think we can get at them, definitely.
Last one on the game, Emily. Would you take a point still? Because Brighton feel to me like one of those teams that if they turn up on the day and turn it on, they can score 4 goals against anyone bar City, basically, or Liverpool. They're that good, but they are weak at the moment and can be beaten. So would you take a point, or are you only going for a win?
I'm clearly going for a win, and they are there for the taking. There is no reason why we shouldn't win, but let's look at the context of the game. If we're 1-0 down till the 94th minute and then score a 94th minute equaliser, I'll clearly be happy. But I haven't mentioned this because we've talked about it quite a lot in previous podcasts, but we need to sort out our set-piece defending. If we can sort out our set-piece defending after that howler run against West Ham that I know upset Mikey deeply, then that should be one way to making sure that we can win, because we can do it. We showed against Aston Villa that when they are regimented and they all stick to the plan and they've got 100% concentration, we can beat the top teams. I don't care if Brighton are in the top half of the table. We should be beating Brighton at home.
Yeah, they're a good side, but they're not the team they were.
They are a good side. No, they absolutely are a good side. And I think De Zerbi is a fantastic manager and they've got great personnel, but they've currently got a decimated team. They can't find form. They can't win in the league. So we should not be satisfied with a point at home against Brighton. But I may have a differing opinion at 5 o'clock on Saturday.
Let's move away from the game for 10 minutes or so. One area we're going to talk about briefly, Mikey, was this vote among Premier League clubs to allow loans between clubs who are owned by the same person. So it was either 12-8 or 13-7 or something, the vote, the way it was reported differently. But Forest were one of the nays, obviously, because Evangelos Los Marinakis owns Olympiacos and Forest and is soon to own Rio Ave in Portugal. And I think he would like to own Monza in Italy from reading reports there. What do you think about it in principle, that clubs can loan between their family, basically?
It's a very good question. I think if you look back historically, so say Manchester City, can people remember when they loaned New York City? I think because it was part of their family. So this has been going on a long time, and this is nothing new. If you look at Udinese and Watford, I think they share players like it's gone out of fashion. Obviously, Forest, and when we're in the Championship, used to send most of our best players to Olympiacos. Now it's almost the other way around. So this isn't new, but I guess there's an uncomfortable nature that kind of underpins it, isn't there? If it's possible for one person or a group of people to own a succession of forward and then sort of swap players between them, it does make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. I think where I'm at in my opinion of it, I don't think it should be outlawed because it's a free market, and to be honest, some people will sign for Forest knowing that they'll spend a year in Greece because they just will, and vice versa. So I don't think it should be outlawed because you've got to give people the chance to experience different cultures and all that sort of stuff and swap players. It should be fine. But I think it needs to be governed with a set of rules or a set of sort of boundaries or red lines or whatever. I think there was one season where Watford and Udinese swapped about 14 players or something, which is just a bit mad. So I don't know what the cutoff should be, whether it's financial or whether it's number of players or whether it's a time limit cutoff or whether it's per window. But I think there should be something in there. I don't think the answer is to outright ban it at all, because like I said, I think it's freedom of movement. Somebody wants to invest their money in a football club in Greece and in Italy and in England, then they should be allowed to say, if one player says, can I spend the last year of my career in Greece? And he says, fine. And that should be allowed. I don't see anything wrong with that. But I do think it just needs to be governed. So, like I said, don't just ban it, but just govern it, and with a clear set of rules so everybody understands that that's the framework that they're working in. Now, I was going to mention as well the deduction of the points from Everton, which has obviously shot us up a place in the league as well. Again, I get it. I do feel slightly uncomfortable because it's almost like It's almost like you've been caught stealing from a shop and you've stole a bag of crisps. When you know that 10 minutes ago somebody stole like half a load of shopping and some beer and everything else and they've got away with it. Doesn't mean what you've done is right. It just means that other people perhaps are exploiting the rules and getting away with them for whatever reason more than you. So I do feel an element of sympathy for Everton. But I think that'll all come out in the wash, and I'm sure they'll go through each club and fine them and points deduction or whatever. But somebody's got to be the first one on the block, and unfortunately it's Everton. But going back to the change of players, just think it needs to be governed. Clear. If you break it, this is the punishment. Go ahead. Everybody clear. Everybody signs onto it. The answer is never really just to ban stuff, because people just find ways to navigate around it. Just put a framework in there where people can operate, because it's a free world, it's a free market. If he wants to buy a club in Italy and give them players, let him. Unless it's fundamentally wrong, which I don't think it is. Do you agree with that, Matt? I think it just needs to be a bit more controlled and it needs to face into it. It needs to be visible for everybody to see, so there's no ambiguity.
Yeah, and I'm sure Man City would protest they haven't stolen, 15 big screen TVs yet, and Chelsea would say the same just for legal reasons there, and that will come out in the wash. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Forest Olympiacos thing I don't have a particular problem with. because we haven't profited from it that much, have we? Have we had many good players from there? My issue is more around Saudi Arabia and nation states owning, Newcastle, and basically they own the Saudi league, really, don't they? And if they can just pick the best players and send them to Newcastle, that is dodgy. And if they can buy a World Cup, that's dodgy. But that's a wider sporting question around sports washing and the fact it probably works because they get so much inward investment, they make their cash back. But in terms of what Forest do, I think it's all right. And other clubs, I don't have an issue with. I mean, Brighton can't loan between their Belgian club this year because they're both in Europe. So they probably need to be some sensible cut-offs. But we can't send, 15 players to Olympiacos necessarily. But if we want to get Omar Richards a few games, then I don't have a problem with that. So, I think it's fine in principle. There's wider issues in the game that need addressing. But more than Forest loaning Olympiacos a few fringe players, certainly. Right. I think that brings us 40 minutes. Any other business, Emily? Anything else you want to discuss before we depart?
No, I'm good. I'm very excited for the game on Saturday. Oh, I've mentioned my scarf before. I found my lucky scarf, so all is good.
Good. Mikey, anything from you before we depart?
No, I don't think so. Same as Emily. Really looking forward to it. It was really bad news about Taiwo today, but as we've hopefully tried to articulate, there is a lot to be positive about. I've got to say the atmosphere at home was back to how it should be and how it is and what we're capable of. So if everybody brings that to the next 2 home games, there will be points because that City Ground crowd is worth a lot. Believe me. You go to some away games and you even watch it on telly, you can hear a pin drop, not at our place. So teams don't like coming here. That's why we've only lost a couple of times in a year, because it's it's a bloody old place to come. So all I would say is get behind the lads, as we'll do. It should be tactically really interesting in 2 months. Don't know what to expect, but I think it'll be a little bit like last year's. But then I think Everton will be totally different. I think that'll be a basketball game back and forward because they're really good away and we're really good at home. But that's another one for another week. So there's a couple of good winnable home games, and I think we've got Fulham as well away. So there's points there, everybody. There's point, and that could really shoot us up the table to that safety mid-table bit that we're all sort of craving for.
Yeah, the Everton game worries me more than, apart from Spurs, any game out of the next 6 games. I think the Everton one, they're actually quite a lot better than their league position would say, judging by the numbers. I think they're a team on the up, despite being literally a team on the down because they're points deduction. But if they react in a positive way to it, then I think someone said in the comments there's no better time to get a 10-point deduction than this season with the absolute, low quality of the teams at the bottom of the league. So I think they'll be all right, and they'll present us with a really tough game. The only thing for me was people will know Our Glorious Banners on Twitter. They're doing a really good auction for charity, or Simon Bristow is auctioning off some I think it's 9 signed copies of his book by Steve Cooper. So check that out on Our Glorious Banners on Twitter, or I think there's tickets available through the Forza Garibaldi website. But Greg's on Monday, so he might talk about that a bit more. In the meantime, thanks for everyone who has joined us at 10 to 9 on Thursday evening. Good to have you all with us from all over the world. Lots of comments, very much appreciated. Mikey, thank you very much.
And thank you, Andrew. I've not been on for a while because of work, but I'm rocking a Christmas jumper every day from now until I basically run out. So I don't know, middle of January. Who knows?
Well, the good thing is Mikey's got more than one Christmas jumper if he's going to do that. He's got a whole collection, so that's good. Emily, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It has. Good to have one with us. We shall be back on Monday post Brighton. Greg, Gary, and I think Mikey are doing it. So have a good few days, everyone. Enjoy the game, and we shall see you soon.